Good morning, Click Church. It's such an honor and privilege to share with you. And I hope you have had a really good Sunday. I want to share on work relationship. And let me read you a passage of scripture from the book of Luke, chapter 10, reading verse 38 to 42. And as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. Now she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to Jesus and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary had chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." Now this story of the two siblings is familiar to many of us. It's a story about one sibling working in the kitchen and making preparations to entertain guests, while the other sibling is involved in spiritual pursuits. And when the kitchen girl, Martha, complains that she isn't getting much help from her sister Mary, Jesus pointed out that Mary's spirituality, focused pursuit are better. Now this passage is an important commentary about work and our working relationship. Work in general, plain and simple, what I do every day, but also the work of stay-at-home parents, retired people, grandparents, caregivers, and students. We all work at something every day. And this passage gave us some important insights about our working relationship. Now, relationship is fundamentally our dealings with people. And in this case, people at our workplaces. Now, people, individuals whom we relate to in our jobs, our professions, or business. We don't relate to animals or things. We own them. Our relationship with people at work, our bosses, our colleagues, our customers, are central to our existence, and may I also say to our sense of mandate and calling. Do not be like someone who said, life wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for all the people. Or a pastor that I once encountered who, when asked, "How's church?" replied that church is awesome if only there are no people in it. At work, we have to deal with people. Now, I don't know how many of you have thought about this, but work is one of the first things that God gives man in the creation story. We all know that right after spending 7 days creating the universe, the earth, oceans, plants, and the fishes, that God then created Adam. Now, many of us, if we had to guess, would say that the next part of the creation story is when God created Eve, his mate. However, if you check Genesis chapter 2, you will discover that God created work for man before he created Eve. So Genesis chapter 2 says that the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. Now that's work. And it wasn't until 2 verses later that God thought it was good to create Eve for Adam. Now work is important in the Bible, and it is an important part of living a fulfilled life. The wisest of men observe this in Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verse 4, that this is what I have observed to be good, that it is appropriate for a person to eat, drink, and to find satisfaction in their toilsome labor. Now that's work or profession under the sun during the few days of life that God has given them, for this is their lot. Now I want to look at work differently today. I want to look at the spiritual component of work because first and foremost, we were put on this earth to engage in relating for a lifelong process of growing maturity and spirituality. So the back the question, how does this spiritual side works? You see, work was never meant to be just work. It always had an ordained role embedded in our spiritual growth. And in that spiritual context, work is no longer just something we do to get ahead in life. It's not solely about, accomplishing more than the next person. It is not an addiction that feeds the ego. It's not about getting out of the house because we can't stand those who live there rather. Then what is work about? Number one, I believe, the work is about giving and serving. The spiritual side of work involves a giving and serving, not just taking and taking and taking, which is what our culture is today. And it is only through giving and serving that we are transformed and growing. So work develops the worker, be it in the office, at home, in the garden, in the food pantry, or a patient's bedside. Work is an important part in the process of learning how to be in relationship with people, including those, if I may add, that we don't like. It is where we become less selfish and where we can grow and mature. Now, work is our gift to the world. It's our social fruitfulness, if you will, where we work for a greater good of our families and society. And when people are out of work, ultimately you get social disorder, all sorts of issues. And we likely see these things happening. Unfortunately, given the continuing economic mayhem resulting from our pandemic, and particularly in Victoria because of the additional lockdowns. And so in a sense, work is more than simply self-focused, but it becomes a way that we are safe from total self-centeredness. It gives us a reason to exist that is larger than ourselves. It gives us a sense of purpose. It gives us dignity. Gives us an aspiration, inspiration, and hope. Work gives us a place in salvation. It helps us redeem the world from sin. It enables creation to go on creating. Now, back to Martha and Mary and the scriptures we read. We can say Martha is doing basically busy work, while perhaps ignoring the spiritual purpose of her labors. On the other hand, we see Mary focus on the urgency of Jesus' ministry. We see giving and serving in Mary rather than the almost compulsive busy work in Martha, a work that lacked long-term redeeming values. So do not be afraid to serve at work. Do not be afraid to cultivate a relationship with your peers and your colleagues and all in order to mount a service. Matter of fact, Paul suggested we service. The Apostle Paul suggested that we serve not as unto man, but unto God. So in whatever or whichever capacity we found ourselves engaging in our workplaces or work life, that we are to serve as not unto man, but unto God. And that's found in Colossians chapter 3, verse 23. The second point I want to talk about work relationship is that work builds community. And as we work for others, we give to ourselves really. Work leads to self-fulfillment. It uses the education, the experience, gifts, and talent we know we have, and it also calls on gifts within us of which we may be unaware. Ever heard of people or friends who started their own business because they are tired of dealing with bosses who work them too hard and then took all the credit at the same time. So they decided to be self-employed, as it would be apparently much easier, not having to subscribe to the dictates of others, the unreasonable behaviors of their bosses. And then it wasn't long before the people who hired them as independent contractors worked them too hard. The people who contracted them for work appear far worse than their old bosses. Nothing had really changed. It's almost like they jumped from the pan into the fire itself. But if you journey your spirituality at work, you may soon realize that God actually allows a lot of tough situations in our workplaces, in our lives, work lives, by allowing or putting these people or circumstances in our path to teach us how to apply and journey our Christian faith. We almost have to imagine sometimes, I don't know about you, but it happens to me very often, imagine that Jesus on our shoulder guiding our interactions with challenging people or challenging circumstances. Now, I don't know if God really does put people in our path to test us, but I do know that by looking at work relationships as a way to apply our spiritual and moral beliefs and values, we grow and mature in dealings with others. And in that process, we build community. Now, in the story we read, there was spiritual work to be done. And Jesus was only going to be present for a short time. Thus, he said to Martha, when she complained about not getting enough help or any help around the house from her sibling, that Mary had chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Now, please, no one should quit their work next week. Not that most of us can afford to anyway, or quit your kitchen duties at home. My point is this: it is not what we do, but how we do it. The spiritual side of work can be practiced at any job, at any time. And in building community, we build networks. We build, a capacity to support, to help others. Someone inspiring someone else to do the better. And then number 3, stop being a casualty of work wars. Now, engaging in negative politics can lead to career or relationship suicide. Take steps to create a positive environment that will help enhance not only your work performance, the atmosphere at work, in other words, the culture, but also your relationship and your spirituality. Negative attitude at work or business is all about self-interest and personal gain. It is manipulating the behavior of others to achieve personal gain at the expense of another. Work politics and selfishness encourage hypocrisy, secrecy, rumor mongering, power broking, and these are not good for a relationship, or any relationship for that matter, or indeed your spiritual health. Those who indulge in work politics or negativity at work have one thing in common. They treat life as a competition and adopt a win-lose mentality that demands they must win at all cost. Instead, praise others, especially when they struggle. Say nice things to your co-workers, even if they don't say nice things to you. Let things slide off your back. Give someone a little extra space. Give people a chance to earn something. Practice the gleaning principle. If in business, don't shave prices to the margin so thin that others have to die serving you. Admit and apologize for mistakes you make. Let someone else have the credit for a job well done. Try to understand your customers' difficulties and show empathy, especially during stressful times like now. It's quite unimaginable how little things can change people's perspective and weather altogether. Now remember that you and I lay claim to a higher truth, and that we have a moral compass to guide us in all our endeavors, including work and the relationship associated with it. And if you tend to forget that, or keep a Bible or a book of Bible verses, at your desk, in the kitchen, wherever you work, it will serve as a good reminder of the true purpose of work and the relationship thereof. And finally, remember who your real boss is. Our boss is a Jewish carpenter, not the one you like or dislike. Well, that is the difference between Mary and Martha, and that can be the difference in your life as well. So let me conclude. Let these thoughts guide your work from here on, and see if you and those around you aren't all feeling a bit closer to God whenever they meet you. We must cultivate relationship at work, good relationship, sincere relationship. Cultivate them at work or in business because of who we are. We are the called ones, and we must act like one. When your colleagues and students and friends and loved ones are watching to see who is still standing, who really care and can help. Make sure it is you and I. God is in our work. Make Him known in our work culture through great relationships. Now, I was told to give you 3 questions for your discussion this Sunday. And so here goes. Number 1, we often see work relationship as an employer-employee situation. What if I'm the owner or the employer? Would this spiritual side be applicable for me? Number 2, if work has an embedded spiritual dimension, would God cause me to different places at different times to fulfill His agenda? And then number 3, my workplace is toxic. How can I really give, serve, build a community and avoid the politics of it all? How to craft real relationship in such a place? The Lord bless you all.